As we stand here in the beautiful spaces in Merrion Square, Dublin, in the Irish Architectural Archive, with tall ceilings and beautiful natural light, we congratulate Anne and Jean-Philippe on being honoured by this wonderful award. It is important for the world to know that people like you exist. It's important for us.
We were absolutely delighted when we heard that Lacaton Vassal received the 2021 Pritzker Prize. Their voice has called out to us from the space of architecture for many years, asking questions loud and clear, telling us things like never demolish what you find, give double what you are asked for, do nothing if this is the best answer. And this was way before the climate change crisis or the pandemic crisis. These were core values of theirs right from the start. They use words such as tender, kind, generous when speaking about a place or a program or a community. They've shown us how important it is to listen. They work patiently and tirelessly with communities and people so as to make an architecture that liberates and provides freedom and comfort for the human body, for the human psyche. They make spaces that are beautiful, full of joy, full of light, full of fresh air, full of hope. Their presence has shown us how to dream of a better world, how to confront the forces which eradicate and leave no space for architecture. They look at the world with a keen eye, reminding us of Elwar when he says, "There is another world, and it is this one." Lacaton Vassal get under the skin of architecture. Deceptively sounding simple ambitions, virtually impossible to achieve in the current litigious, bureaucratic, commercial world, are their daily bread. They put their money where their heart is, spending carefully and skillfully where it matters most to the user. They exercise the incredible technical skill needed to navigate through the obstacles one by one so as to get to what they want their buildings to be, instruments of freedom. Their built work, their thinking, teaching and dreaming has inspired and challenged the world of architecture for so many years. And for all the above reasons and many, many more, we celebrate them as recipients of this wonderful, prestigious Pritzker Prize 2021.
It is your philosophical position, your highly intelligent understanding of situations, your seemingly modest solutions that make you leaders. Your architectural strategies are both delicate and robust, which help us see solutions that are inventive, that lead to renewed ways of thinking, to renewed ways of making. Your work is both first principled and highly principled. You speak of stretching social and spatial opportunities. You believe that architecture can be poetic and joyful beyond the functional, that architecture triggers pleasure and imagination. You both play an important role in the profession and teaching world of architecture. Your work challenges us to rethink. I am absolutely delighted that the two of you have been chosen as the 2021 Pritzker Prize laureates. Anne and Jean-Philippe, this award is truly merited.
¿Qué se necesita para ganar el Premio Pritzker? Desde que se instituyó en 1979, el Premio Pritzker se entrega a aquel arquitecto o arquitectos que por su trabajo ha contribuido al desarrollo de la profesión mediante el equilibrio entre técnica y arte. Aunque las decisiones de un jurado heterogéneo pueden no dejar contentos a todos, la estadística ofrece algunas pistas sobre cómo se elige a los ganadores del más importante premio de la arquitectura. Si revisamos las características de aquellos que han recibido el premio, encontramos los siguientes datos. 45 hombres han recibido el premio, lo que equivale al 90% de los ganadores. mientras que solo 5 mujeres han sido galardonadas: Zaha Hadid, Kazuyo Sejima, Carme Pillem, Yvonne Farrell, Shelley McNamara y Anley Keaton, lo que equivale al 10%. En cuanto a ganadores por región o país, tenemos los siguientes datos. Europa, 24 ganadores, lo que equivale al 54.54% del total de ganadores. Estados Unidos y Canadá, 7 ganadores, equivalente al 15.90%. Latinoamérica, 4 ganadores, equivalente al 9.09%. Asia, 8 ganadores, equivalente al 18.18%. África, no tiene ganadores. Y Oceanía, un ganador, equivalente al 2.27%. En cuanto a edades al momento de recibir el premio, se tienen las siguientes estadísticas. Hasta 50 años, 8 ganadores, lo que equivale al 18.18% del total de ganadores. De 51 a 60 años, 17 ganadores, equivalente al 38.63%. De 61 a 70 años, 8 ganadores, equivalente al 18.18%. De 71 a 80 años, 8 ganadores, equivalente al 18.18%. Más de 81 años, 3 ganadores, equivalente al 6.81%. Según los números anteriores, es muy probable que el premio Pritzker de este año sea entregado a un arquitecto europeo de entre 51 y 60
Welcome
años.
to the 2021 virtual ceremony of the Pritzker Architecture Prize. Welcome to all of you around the world who join us today to celebrate architecture and the newest members of the Pritzker family, Anne Lacaton and Jean-Philippe Vassal. They are the 49th and 50th laureates in the long and prestigious list of Pritzker architects from all over the world. The Pritzker Architecture Prize began with the visionary intuition and the generosity of Jay and Cindy Pritzker, who in 1979 decided to promote greater awareness of an area of contemporary life that has, in the words of Jay Pritzker, a day-to-day impact on the way we perceive and interact with our surroundings. To this day, Tom and Margot Pritzker have not only continued, but pushed forward the vision and the mission of a prize that since the very beginning reflects clearly its values and goals. To honor a living architect or architects whose outstanding body of built work has produced consistent and significant contributions to humanity and to the built environment through the art of architecture. As we remember the beginnings of the prize, we can see how its criteria have remained stable and firm. At the same time, as we look to the future, we are optimistic and hope to affect those who currently practice architecture, as well as the many who will become future creators of our built environment. It is in this spirit that today we want to honor Anne Lacaton and Jean-Philippe Vassal, 2021 laureates of the Pritzker Architecture Prize.
Descarga gratis los planos del Premio Pritzker 2016. El arquitecto chileno Alejandro Aravena es un reconocido exponente de la arquitectura social y sustentable. Desde 2001, lidera Elemental, un estudio enfocado en proyectos de interés público e impacto social, incluyendo vivienda, espacio público, infraestructura y transporte. Entre sus proyectos se encuentran Quinta Monroy, un complejo habitacional compuesto por viviendas de más de 70 metros cuadrados, a un costo de $7.500 por unidad. Lo Barnechea. El proyecto conformado por un conjunto de 363 casas, donde cada vivienda puede llegar a ofrecer un salón-comedor, 2 dormitorios y un baño en el segundo piso, y un dormitorio principal abuhardillado en el tercero. Monterrey. Es el primer proyecto de Elemental en México, el cual es un conjunto de 70 viviendas, de más de 58 metros cuadrados aproximadamente, que incluyen cajón de estacionamiento. Villa Verde. Es un proyecto de 9.000 unidades alrededor de 30 localidades, para el Fondo Solidario de Vivienda. Estos son solo algunos ejemplos de los desarrollos realizados por Aravena, como parte de su proyecto Casas Expansibles de Interés Social. Podrás descargar estos proyectos dando clic en el enlace que se incluye en la caja de descripción del video.
How come did the Pritzker Prize go to two architects that when asked about intervening a square, their conclusion was to do nothing? I made the math, and at the time, Lacaton and Vassal were in their early 40s. This is a time when you would like to add as many projects as possible to your portfolio. Yet, their attitude was that of being fair to the common good, to the big picture. Their recommendation was to do a more frequent cleaning of the place and take more care of the trees, but not add any design. The time they took to carefully study the question is one of the skills that the built environment requires. No wonder that over time they have been consistently expanding the toolbox with which to improve people's quality of life. Lacaton and Vassal, in that sense, are working towards a democratization of our architecture. They have been trying to reach with a quality built environment those that not necessarily get it. They have been looking for low-cost building system, but not for the sake of cost reduction. Their question instead seems to be, how can we deliver more square meters for the same limited budget so that we can make architecture more accessible? The times we're living require more than ever to work on leveling the field and building community. Be it for political, social, or public health reasons, there is a need to build trust instead of fear in the collective. Their approach to sustainability in that sense not only refers to the built environment. The architecture of Lacaton and Vassal have identified and implemented projects that through civic programs, building methods, public uses, and living spaces are addressing such growing needs. Their architecture contributes in a very concrete way to cool down not only the environmental, but the social warming that is affecting us. The first projects that made them known to the world was their intervention of an old deteriorated social housing tower in the periphery of Paris. Society had assumed that such poor living standard was inevitable when dealing with social housing. In a time where the attitude was to treat them as waste, they said, what if, instead of demolishing, we give this construction a second opportunity? They started by identifying what exactly was wrong with them. They focused on the facade, but not for aesthetical reasons, but because it isolated the apartments from natural light, views, and ventilation, creating that boxy feeling that nobody wanted for a living space. Their alternative proposition was to wrap the building with terraces and balconies. Such a move not only improved the standard and enlarged the living surface of the tiny units, but it had consequences on the whole neighborhood. They transformed a stigmatized urban typology in a new sense of pride for the community. The democratization of architecture, though, regards not only the cost, but the flexible and unimposing nature of the spaces they create. Their signature is not to have a signature. Some may describe the buildings as in your face, but this is far from arrogance. They build frames that support uses in an open way. Such unpretentious architectural language may be the reason why the buildings encourage unexpected instead of predefined functions. To be humble does not mean to be shy. Actually, a rather bold and self-confident character is required for subtle operations. And this may be one of the most delicate balances that Lacaton and Vasal's architecture has been able to achieve. Their careful yet straightforward approach to the built environment. For these, among many reasons, Anne and Jean-Philippe, congratulations on being the recipients of the 2021 Pritzker Architecture Prize. Felicitaciones.
La arquitecta que renunció al Pritzker. Cuando en 2012, la Fundación Giat anunció que el ganador del prestigioso premio era el arquitecto chino Wang Xu, este quiso compartirlo con Liu Wenyu, su esposa y socia, pero ella se negó. Liu Wenyu es una arquitecta china que junto con su marido Wang Xu fundó Amateur Architecture en 1998. Desde entonces colaboran bajo una curiosa filosofía de diseño que establece que la arquitectura es un trabajo a tiempo parcial. Pero a pesar de este trabajo conjunto, el jurado del Pritzker solo premió a Wang Xu, tal y como había pasado en el caso de Robert Venturi y su esposa Denise Scott Brown en 1991. Sin embargo, en una entrevista que Liu Wenyu concedió a El País en 2013, la arquitecta confesó que no le interesaba recibir el Pritzker porque la arquitectura de Amateur Architecture era la que su esposo había querido hacer, pero sobre todo, porque en China quien recibe un premio se vuelve famoso y ella quería seguir teniendo una vida normal. A pesar de ello, las palabras de Wang acerca de la importancia de su socia dentro del despacho no dejan lugar a dudas su valor.
Sin mí, no hay diseño. Sin ella, no puede convertirse en realidad.
Thank you, Alejandro. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are and when you're participating in this, only the second and I hope the last remote Pritzker Prize ceremony in our 43-year history. The built work of architects is obviously located in the physical space of Earth, or the place we call home. Yet there's another dimension in which the work of architects is located. It's in the dimension of time. Our time is defined by the pandemic, and with the pandemic, we've become so very intimate with the buildings and the buildings upon buildings that make up our cities. However difficult this pandemic period has been, there's another place in time that's enduring. It's the place in time which tonight's Pritzker laureates, Anne Lacaton and Jean-Philippe Vassal, anticipated decades ago with significant moral prescience. Theodore Roosevelt wrote, "We cannot afford merely to sit down and deplore the evils of city life as inevitable when cities are constantly growing, both absolutely and relatively. We must set ourselves vigorously about the task of improving them." These words, written more than a century ago, describe our laureates' purpose. They sought to improve the city for its citizens. They sought to improve the city by responding to environmental, economic, and social urgencies for all of its citizens. Let me make the point by touching on their journey through social justice to architecture. Lacaton and Vassal met in the late 1970s when they were both students at the School of Architecture of Bordeaux. Vassal moved to Niger in West Africa in order to pursue urban planning. Lacaton visited her classmate. They were both captivated by the resourcefulness of the population of one of the poorest countries in the world. Niger citizens were able to make something poetic out of nothing. They recall this time as their second schooling. This experience roused their consciousness and their passion. They brought back with them from Niger a profound sense of commitment to making architecture work for those whose resources are limited. They set before their very eyes an image of those in our society who desperately needed social housing. It was the great French writer Victor Hugo who taught us architecture is the great book of humanity, the principal expression of man in his different stages of development, either as a force or as an intelligence. Architecture is the great handwriting of the human race, Every important thought humanity has is written in the buildings and stones of architecture. What are the great ideas and thoughts that Lacaton and Fasal have written in the material things in this, our space, and in this, our time? They come to this moment and this time from their first joint project, a straw hut constructed of locally sourced bush branches. Imagine that. At the very outset of their artistic journey, they were shaped and given vision in one of the world's most impoverished lands. They were inspired to create one of the world's most fundamental human entitlements, shelter, out of the humblest but most plentiful of materials. It is in that experience that we can see the nativity of their commitment to social housing. That is to say, shelters that give housing, protection, and warmth to the most marginal in our midst. As noted in the jury's citation, Fasal and Lacaton have rejected city plans that sought the demolition of social housing. Rather, they prioritized the welfare of the building's inhabitants and their unanimous desires. An example of this is their transformation of 530 units within 3 buildings at Grand Park. This was designed to add generous, bioclimatic, flexible space to each unit, some of which nearly doubled in size. They modernized the building's aesthetics, but more essentially, its functionality, and all without displacing its residents. In their own words, what inspired them was, we met people and families who were attached to their housing, even if the situation was not the best. Much of their built work calls on us to be alert to the time in which we're living. It's to the peripheral and the marginal that we're called to serve. Lacaton and Fasal are surely amongst the most distinguished guides, devoted as they have been for many decades to the welfare and emotional well-being of those for whom they create housing with compassion and aesthetic beauty. For these reasons, it's a great honor to recognize Anne Lacaton and Jean-Philippe Fasal as our Pritzker laureates for 2021.
Grandes
Thank you.
arquitectos que no ganaron el Premio Pritzker. Por la fecha de su creación, en 1979, el Premio Pritzker no pudo ser entregado a buena parte de la plana mayor de arquitectos que construyeron el siglo XX. Por ello, las grandes figuras del movimiento moderno no figuran en el listado. Sin embargo, recibieron otros premios tan destacados como la Royal Gold Medal que entrega cada año el Royal Institute of British Architects, RIBA, desde 1848. En esta lista encontramos a los siguientes arquitectos que, de haber estado vivos, probablemente habrían ganado indiscutiblemente el Premio Pritzker. Frank Lloyd Wright, 1950. Le Corbusier, 1953. Alvar Aalto, 1957. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, 1959. Pierluigi Nervi, 1960. Louis Kahn, 1972.
La France est une terre d'architecture, façonnée par tous les talents qui ont dessiné son visage à travers les siècles. Mansart, Vauban, Viollet-le-Duc, Le Corbusier, de Port-Zampar, Deck, Nouvel et tant d'autres. Ce sont autant de maillons d'une lignée de penseurs d'espace qui ont transformé notre pays. Une lignée dans laquelle vous vous inscrivez, chère Anne Lacaton, cher Jean-Philippe Fasal, avec toute votre singularité. Ce prix Pritzker 2021, l'équivalent pour l'architecture d'un prix Nobel ou d'une palme d'or, vient récompenser votre quête de l'essentiel, votre élan vers l'épure, aussi économe de moyens et de matériaux que prodigue d'espace et de lumière. Le respect de l'environnement se conjugue chez vous avec celui de l'histoire, faisant de l'architecture un dialogue des temps autant qu'un art de l'espace. Dès votre premier projet commun à Niamey au Niger, une maison de paille en osmose avec son écosystème, vous avez posé les fondations de votre philosophie de l'architecture. Ne jamais démolir, toujours transformer, rendre durable ce qui existe déjà, faire plus avec moins, en faisant rimer qualité du logement, bien-être des habitants et protection de l'environnement. De projet en projet, à Paris, Nantes, Toulouse, Bordeaux, Vienne, Genève ou encore Dakar, vous avez conçu, transformé des logements, des bureaux, des institutions culturelles, des espaces publics, des stratégies urbaines, guidées par un souci constant de justice sociale et de durabilité. Mais avec vous, sobriété économique et écologique ne signifie nullement austérité. À chaque fois, vous avez fait le pari de l'ouverture. Vous avez su faire respirer les espaces, les rendre généreux, lumineux, délicieux. Vous nous rappelez, s'il était besoin, que l'architecture est toujours un art politique, un art social, qui façonne nos modes de vie, qui invente ou réinvente un certain usage du monde, qui réinvente nos manières d'habiter les lieux, de nous déplacer, de faire société. En un mot, d'être au monde. Comment permettre au plus grand nombre de vivre mieux? Comment construire des logements de qualité dans le plus grand respect de la planète et de ses ressources? Votre travail inspire toute une nouvelle génération d'architectes, de France comme d'ailleurs, qui s'engagent pour bâtir le monde de demain, un monde où il fait bon vivre, de manière plus durable, plus respectueuse de l'environnement, plus juste. Nous avons plus que jamais besoin de vous, d'eux, de cette audace, de cette inventivité, pour répondre aux défis du XXIe siècle, le crayon et l'équerre à la main. Et j'en suis pleinement convaincu. L'architecture est l'une des clés de notre futur. C'est donc avec beaucoup de fierté pour la France et de confiance en notre avenir que je vous adresse, chère Anne Lacaton et cher Jean-Philippe Vassal, mes plus sincères félicitations. À tous les autres architectes, qu'ils soient déjà riches d'expérience, de succès ou pleins de promesses et de projets, je veux dire aussi mes encouragements à poursuivre cette grande chaîne humaine qui tente, de génération en génération, de donner des lieux à nos utopies. C'est l'honneur insigne, mais aussi la responsabilité immense de votre beau métier. Juste après l'incendie de Notre-Dame, j'avais eu l'occasion d'accueillir le prix Pritzker, ses équipes et de nombreux lauréats à Paris, et de partager ses convictions pour notre architecture, ses talents, cette réinvention permanente de nos sociétés. Et je veux dire que avoir deux architectes français primés par le prix Pritzker est une forme, pour moi, de formidable reconnaissance de tout cela. Et je veux ici vous redire l'ambition de la France en la matière et notre volonté de laisser de plus en plus de place à nos architectes, à nos designers, à toutes celles et ceux qui inventent, réinventent nos espaces. Thank you for laying the foundations for a more livable, responsible future, where our values and ideals can thrive. Thank you so much for your talent and for this very special place you have in our societies. I want to say that France is a strong believer in your art, a strong believer in your common capacity to reinvent our world, being much more consistent with our values and dealing with our challenges. Thank you so
Grandes
much.
arquitectos que no ganaron el premio Pritzker. Sin embargo, recibieron otros premios tan destacados como la Royal Gold Medal que entrega cada año el Royal Institute of British Architects, RIBA, desde 1848. En esta lista encontramos a los siguientes arquitectos, que de haber estado vivos, probablemente habrían ganado indiscutiblemente el premio Pritzker. Richard Joseph Neutra, post-mortem, 1977. Louis Kahn, 1971. Marcel Brogniart, 1968. Pierluigi Nervi, 1964. Alvar Aalto, 1963. Eero Saarinen, post-mortem, 1962. Le Corbusier, 1961. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, 1960. Walter Gropius, 1959. Frank Lloyd Wright, 1949. Louis Henry Sullivan, post-mortem, 1944. Como puede verse, estos dos premios, tanto la Royal Gold Medal del Riva, como la Medalla de Oro de Leiga y Eich son reconocimientos de mucha valía, a los que solo pueden aspirar los verdaderamente grandes arquitectos de todo el mundo.
Look up, see the sky through the transparent roof, see the clouds and the birds pass by. Further to west, the cranes of the port of Dunkirk, to the east, the beach of Malo-les-Bains, the sea, two people sitting on a bench facing the sea. The memory of the freshness in the gardens of the Alhambra in Granada, the cold greenhouses of Lisbon, and many others. Feel at home in the city, on the 10th floor, sitting in your living room, getting up, going to the winter garden, looking to see if the plants are doing well. Going out on the balcony, looking down at the street, at the city, at the sky in the distance. Continuing on the balcony and coming back inside through the bedroom. Move around your flat. In the public space, to look at the person, looking at the person, looking at something. The simple situations inspire us with their qualities and the sense of freedom they stimulate. They carry the fundamental ideal of inhabiting or feeling free in a space, independently of any program. Inhabiting concerns each of us with the same intensity, the same generosity, the same attention, and the same desires. Everywhere. Architecture, as a support of these qualities of inhabiting, is intended for each and for everyone. Inhabiting is the starting point of all our projects, whatever the program or the usage. The lightness and simplicity that emerge from these fundamental situations are present in the evolution and history of architecture. They travel across time. Architecture and architects are a huge inspiration for us. We are interested in many of them, even if they work in very different ways. Jacques Ondelat, Mies van der Rohe, Fraiotto, Shinohara, Cedric Price, René Gayusté, Jean Renaudy, Hans Scharoun, Lina Bobardi, Paulo Mendes da Rocha, Yona Friedman, Giancarlo De Carlo, Archigram, and so many others. Their architecture gives us a sense of perfect balance between a construction, its environment, and the people who live there. This equation runs through all societies and matches what we understand by inhabiting. To feel comfortable, entirely cared by spaces, by what happens in them, and the way in which they are connected, without any limitations. We are at a point in the history of architecture where the question of inhabiting becomes an essential subject. We do this by constructing the conditions for freedom through space, in a positive and open relationship with the climate, and by starting from the existing, without ever demolishing anything. This is the essence of our work. In this respect, the heritage of modernity and experiments with free plan, spatial generosity, transparency, and light for all offer many valuable lessons. The modernists made inhabiting a central subject for architecture. Unfortunately, they were confronted with the difficulty of the big number, the excesses of industrialization, and the error of the tabula rasa, which makes even less sense today. We can continue these principles of architecture in the city nowadays, no longer by replacing, but instead by adding, superposing, paying attention to what already exists, and by trusting the inhabitants. Interpretation, reorganization, and remanipulation of its components enable the fabrication of new spaces and the making of new discoveries. We can do with almost nothing. This almost nothing that we add is very fine and subtle and precise. Quite marvelously, it can change everything. This almost nothing is based on a profoundly attentive and generous observational view of what the city has become, without any preconceptions or judgments. This is a radical reversal of perspective. This is where the invention is, and this is the origin of ecology and economy. Our experience in Niger, where we spent the first 5 years of our professional life, has been decisive in this sense. It was there that we developed this deep curiosity about working with whatever is already in place and understood the added value and the richness that this offers. It is in Africa that we understood how much the existing is a resource that is direct, free, alive, active, whether it is for constructing a shelter, positioning a water point, dividing up a plot of land, using sunlight or shadow, or organizing a group of people. We have learned the importance of looking at things as closely as possible, with utmost precision. We understood that you can build a space without material, simply by attitudes, by use, by the relationship with what is immediately around, by movement. By moving away, gathering, by choosing precisely the place to stay, to talk, to work or to rest, people make space. Or simply by assembling 3 branches, stretch out a fabric or a cloth, lay down a carpet. Then one can improvise, welcome the unexpected, adapt, because the frame is flexible, light and open. The years we spent in Niger has broadened our way of seeing and has enabled us to understand that the existing is a present state. This present is made up of situations in movement, of pleasure and of usage. This present is the only resource, the only thing that is there. We have learned that we must capture it, make it our own, because it's carrying a project. This present is renewed every day, and it requires to observe it constantly, to be highly attentive to its variations and to adapt all the time. This is a philosophy of viewing that brings us back to the capacities of reality and of the lived space. The lesson from Niger is universal. This is an ongoing reflection that applies everywhere. The generosity that we have observed in housing in Buenos Aires, in the streets of Tokyo, or in agricultural greenhouses and botanical gardens tells the same story. As space or climate, the existing is a present material in which we inhabit. Considering the existing as a present material deeply modifies the way we envisage the city, which is always approached from perspective, either prospective or conservative, and never in its present state. Yet the future is precisely the present. Considering the existing as a present material enables us to consider every situation without a filter, or reading grid with eyes open, positive and precise. This leads to be close to everything, to focus on daily life, on what the inhabitant produces, and to invent from these sensible variations and adding almost nothing.
In France and all around the world, the demolition is unfortunately developing in the cities and no longer raises any trouble. It is no longer a taboo. Demolition has become a short-term solution, an easy decision, as well as a mode of urban generation, even a mode of recycling. Yet, demolition is irreversible. Any demolition destroys a vast quantity of information, of knowledge, layers, materials, and memories. Life takes a long time to establish and to grow. The times of growth, occupation, and habitation is extremely precious. It cannot be reconstituted. It is urgent to stop demolishing, eliminating, deleting, cutting, and to start from the city as it is, exactly as it is, to do and to invent with all what we have. Any building can be transformed, reused, any tree can be carefully conserved, any constraint can be turned positively. To make do, to continue, to extend, to enlarge, instead of demolition and reconstruction, is more ecological, more economical, more gentle, and more optimistic. It is also more creative. Economy is a key point. Economy is, first of all, taking a rigorous, precise, and sensitive look at what is already there. In any situation, it allows to create the conditions for doing, for making possible. It's a vector for freedom, efficiency, and sustainability. This means using all the values already there, without exception, without arbitrary selection, to reuse spaces and places in the sense of what they can offer, never going against their nature, or never losing anything. This requires us to observe and understand their qualities and to love them. Considering ecology in the city should lead to consider as most important a form of good living for all, free of constraints, a way of living associated with the generosity and freedom of climate. The climate is part of the existing, it is a present state, with which we nurture a friendly relationship. For every project, we ask ourselves how we can build a space that does not impose anything, a space of pure freedom. Some will say this freedom, others may not, but it is given. We work with an incredible material, emptiness, air, light. This is a material in which people live, move around, work, study, sing, kiss. This material is so vital, yet costs nothing. It offers freedom and triggers desires to dream, to move, to appropriate. This is their escape. Viewed this way, this material is poetic and fantastic. The Pritzker Prize represents for us the immense satisfaction of gaining recognition for an approach that is not easy to implement. It also comes as a great surprise. We are amazed that it resounds so strongly in so many countries, among architects as well as among people. Perhaps it is because this approach touches on fairly universal aspirations, the desire to live directly with one's climate, to invent one's own way of life, to have enough space to accomplish all the desired uses in complete freedom. Inhabiting is the most noble and the most important issue in architecture. Our intention and our aim is always to build places that offer freedom, that escape from standardization, yet without exiting a normal production system and normal economy, nor subtracting to regulations, while, however, questioning them. Intimately linked to the invisible, to the attention and capacity of each individual, our approach is far from being isolated. The Pritzker Prize makes it visible. All those who carry the same approach and we may feel isolated are also happy and feel now stronger.
We are honored and deeply pleased to receive the Pritzker Architecture Prize 2021, and we are impressed and feel privileged to join the prestigious list of the architects who have received the prize before. We warmly thank Tom and Margot Pritzker and the members of the Pritzker family. We thank the jury for rewarding our work and for understanding and highlighting the sense of our approach. We also thank our team, all those who have worked with us now or before. We have contributed greatly to the realization of all the projects over the time. And also the interns who have participated in their own way in the projects. We thank Frédéric Druot, with whom we have long shared the concern for the existing and completed remarkable projects of transformation together. We especially thank the 4 faithful engineers and friends with whom we have been working since the very beginning of our practice, and who have always helped us to solve complex technical issues in a simple way, and made so that the technique always finds solution and never constrains the project. We thank the clients who have placed their trust in us and with whom we have completed wonderful projects. We think with sympathy to the students we have met in our teaching studios. They have pushed us to question, to see things differently, and they give us a great optimism for the future. We thank all those who sent us from all over the world friendly messages that deeply touched us. Finally, we think with a great pleasure to the inhabitants and users of the buildings and spaces that we have built. They constantly surprise us with their creativity and talent for using and appropriating space. They prove to us that we were right to give freedom in designing the space. In 1992, we wrote a short text for our first exhibition in Paris, entitled Il fera beau demain. Its conclusion still expresses our state of mind. L'architecture sera directe, utile, précise, économe, ouverte, gaie, poétique, libre et cosmopolite.
Congratulations, Anne, and congratulations, Jean-Philippe. Félicitations. For this well-deserved honor, you have opened our eyes and changed landscapes around your country and beyond, teaching us that architecture can no longer simply be about multiplying brand new insertions in the landscape, but needs to learn the arts of careful, judicious subtraction and well thought out, socially motivated, improving addition. Your projects have changed the lives of inhabitants and beautified city districts where other architects have often not even ventured. You have opened our eyes to lessons that go well beyond this year's prize and that will affect architecture for generations to come. Félicitations.
Cari Anne e Jean-Philippe, che contenta sono che abbiate vinto questo Premio Pritzker 2021. Ve lo meritate. Voi siete gli architetti che avete detto che le architetture sono belle, soprattutto quando la gente si trova bene dentro. E questa è un'idea grande che si ripete in tutta la vostra opera, in tutte le vostre architetture, che è un'architettura generosa, luminosa, trasparente, un'architettura bellissima. Quindi io vi do i miei complimenti per questo premio e che ne vengano tanti ancora. Bacio a tutti voi.
アンさん、それからジャン・フィリップさん、どうもおめでとうございます。今でもよく覚えているのが、アンさんと私たち2人ともまだ若い頃に北欧のレクチャーで会って初めてお二人の仕事を拝見した時です。でそれがすごい印象深かったので、その後ボルドーの家を拝見させてもらってまた大変感銘を受けたことを覚えています。なんかその正面をくぐり抜けていったら ガラスの、コルタなのかな、サンルームのようなところがついて、それと手前の細い場所とかうまくこう組み合わさっていって、非常に新しい生活の仕方とか新しい社会との対応の仕方みたいなものを、もうその空間から直接受けました。強い印象を受けました。でそれがそのまま学校とか、それから大きなパリのハウジングとかいろんなところでずっとキープされていて、でまさしくどんなふうにいろんな人が一緒に暮らしていくかというようなことに関しての夢のある提案が本当に素晴らしいことだと思います。どうもありがとうございました。
And Lacaton, Jean-Philippe Vassal. We're here outside the Supreme Court because those words up there, equal justice under law, most famous in the United States in the law, were written by an architect. And you've lived up to that. Justice and many other things, environmentally sound, dealing with the problems of our time, but most of all answering a question, is it possible in the world of not too long from now, there will be 5 billion people living in cities, and most of them will not be able to afford housing. Can they live in buildings that reflect decent, good architecture? You've answered that question. You've said yes, and congratulations.
Congratulations, Anne and Jean-Philippe, on winning the 2021 Pritzker Prize. Your work is so striking. It's always thoughtful and responsible and respectful of its location and of those who use it. I think there's a real beauty in that ethic and in the architecture, and that's what you continue to create. So bravo.
Parabéns, Anne, parabéns, Jean-Philippe, pelo Pritzker Prize 2021. Dos vários aspectos da arquitetura de vocês que merece especial reconhecimento é a capacidade que vocês têm de incorporar os vários aspectos da sustentabilidade, não só a dimensão ambiental, mas também a dimensão econômica e a dimensão social. Tudo isso com uma arquitetura excepcional. Portanto, parabéns a vocês.
祝贺你们，安妮和让·菲利普，你们的作品证明了建筑的质量、环境的质量和社会道德的追求之间，他们的关系不是对立。
Congratulations, Anne and Jean-Philippe. Thank you for your tremendous service and welcome to the Pritzker Prize family.
Anne and Jean-Philippe, my heartiest congratulations to you on winning our prize this year. We are delighted to have you in our flock.
Congratulations, Anne and Jean-Philippe.
Congratulations, Anne and Jean-Philippe.
Philip Johnson, Estados Unidos. Premiado en 1979. Obra seleccionada. Glass House, ubicada en Connecticut. Fue el primer galardonado con el Premio de Arquitectura Pritzker en reconocimiento a sus 50 años de imaginación y vitalidad, que plasmó en cada uno de sus proyectos. Diseñó una gran variedad de museos, teatros, bibliotecas, casas, jardines y estructuras corporativas. Luis Barragán, México. Premiado en 1980. Obra seleccionada, Casa Estudio Luis Barragán, ubicada en Ciudad de México. Es el único arquitecto mexicano reconocido con el Premio Pritzker. Fue galardonado por su compromiso con la arquitectura, al implementarla, como un acto sublime e imaginación poética. Ha creado jardines, plazas, fuentes de una belleza obsesionante y paisajes metafísicos, para la meditación o la compañía. Sir James Sterling, Reino Unido. Premiado en 1981. Obra seleccionada, Biblioteca de la Facultad de Historia de Cambridge, ubicada en Reino Unido. Fue considerado wunderkind, el niño prodigio de la arquitectura moderna, por casi 20 años. Es conocido por una serie de proyectos de concursos sin construir, que culminaron en grandes edificios como un museo en Stuttgart, un instituto científico en Berlín y 3 proyectos en los Estados Unidos. Su trabajo inició en un tiempo en que el movimiento moderno aún estaba en ascensión, por lo que sus variaciones, ángulos y detalles en el estilo eran extraordinarios y originales. Kevin Roche, Estados Unidos. Premiado en 1982. Obra seleccionada, Edificio Caballeros de Colón. Los críticos elogiaron el arquitecto estadounidense de origen irlandés por sus trabajos innovadores en vidrio. Fue reconocido por sus obras, las cuales algunas veces interceptaban la moda, como por ejemplo el pabellón Robert Lehman y el ala de arte primitivo del Michael C. Rockefeller. Fue jurado del Pritzker de 1983 a 1991. Yeo Min Pei, China y Estados Unidos. Premiado en 1983. Obra seleccionada, Galería Nacional de Arte, Edificio Este, Estados Unidos. El arquitecto de origen chino tiende a usar grandes formas abstractas, geométricas y diseños afilados. Sus estructuras de cristal chapado parecen surgir del movimiento modernista de alta tecnología. Su trabajo durante los últimos 40 años incluye no solo palacios de industria, gobierno y cultura, también algunos de los mejores conjuntos de vivienda de nivel de ingreso bajo y moderado. Por medio de su habilidad, ha elevado el uso de los materiales a un arte. Richard Maher, Estados Unidos. Premiado en 1984. Obra seleccionada, Haig, Museum of Art, Georgia. Un arquitecto destacado por sus llamativos diseños blancos. Sus estructuras de cristal chapado parecen surgir del movimiento modernista de alta tecnología. Utilizaba en sus diseños revestimientos de porcelana esmaltada elegante y formas rígidas de vidrio, los cuales han sido descritos como puristas, esculturales y neo-Le Corbusier. Sus casas, seminarios, museos y edificios públicos han extendido y enriquecido nuestra imagen, nuestro pensamiento, nuestro deseo y probablemente nuestro hacer. En su búsqueda por claridad y sus experimentos por balancear la luz, formas y espacios, él ha creado trabajos que son personales, vigorosos y originales.
High Museum of Art.
Hans Wollien, Austria. Premiado en 1985. Obra seleccionada, Museo Abteiberg. El arquitecto austríaco se hizo conocido por sus diseños de edificios y muebles posmodernos. Considerado también un artista, al asegurarse de que lo diseñado sea lo más importante, no el diseñador. Gottfried Bohm, Alemania. Premiado en 1986. El arquitecto alemán, en el transcurso de su carrera, se ha ocupado por ver los elementos de su trabajo que sugiere el pasado y también atestigua su pronta aceptación, tanto en el diseño de iglesias, ayuntamientos, vivienda pública y edificios de oficinas. Su obra altamente sugestiva combina lo antiguo con lo moderno. Kenzo Utange, Japón. Premiado en 1987. Obra seleccionada. Catedral de Santa María de Tokio. El arquitecto japonés fue conocido por llevar un acercamiento modernista a los estilos tradicionales japoneses. Tuvo un papel decisivo en el movimiento metabolista de Japón, y sus diseños posguerra ayudaron a que la nación entrara en la modernidad. Gordon Bunshaft, Estados Unidos. Premiado en 1988. Obra seleccionada. Biblioteca Beinecke de libros raros y manuscritos. Arquitecto de reclamos modestos y responsabilidades significativas, entrenado en el estilo internacional, se hizo famoso por sus edificios minimalistas. Sus obras maestras de la arquitectura moderna demuestran una comprensión de la tecnología contemporánea y de los materiales, que es insuperable. Oscar Niemeyer, Brasil. Premiado en 1988. Obra seleccionada. Museo de Arte Contemporáneo de Niterói. Reconocido como uno de los primeros en ser pionero de nuevos conceptos en la arquitectura en este hemisferio, sus diseños son gestos artísticos con lógica subyacente y sustancia. Su búsqueda de la gran arquitectura, ligada a las raíces de su tierra natal, ha dado lugar a nuevas formas y lirismo en los edificios, no solo en Brasil, sino en todo el mundo.